So, you've been waiting for this day for a long time. Not doing no wacky intro. I'm not doing any crazy edits. It's just gonna be me and you. Today, as of today, guys, officially marks Five Nights at Freddy's 10-year anniversary. Let that sink in for a minute. 10 years of Five Nights at Freddy's. When you think about it, it's crazy that a game that not a lot of people had faith in when it first came out. When it first came out, no one knew about it. It was almost gonna be another failure, but it wasn't until a popular YouTuber, Markiplier, brought it into the limelight, and people were like, "Oh my god, this is a great game." And we only have one man to thank for that, and it's not Markiplier, it's not Jacksepticeye, it's not Corey Kenshin, not 8-Bit Ryan, not Dawko. It's not any of those. It's one man. We all know his name. If you're new to the fan base, you might not know. But everyone who's been here since the beginning, Scott Cawthon, the creator of FNaF. He created a storyline that was something that had never been done in a horror game before. When, at the time, a lot of horror games were copying Slender, the 8 Pages. There was never like, oh yeah, we're going to try something completely different. Scott tried different. He experimented with the formula of horror. And that's why I like FNaF 1 so much. It gets the feeling of horror just right. Because to me, at least to me, horror is like you feel alone. Like, horror isn't something, it's like, oh, you have this crazy immortal guy chasing you in a mask. That's not horror to me. Horror to me is just the feeling that you're alone. Just the feeling that you are alone. And the feeling that you're gonna be alone for hours upon hours, only to know that you're not really alone. And that's what FNaF gets so perfect, especially FNaF 1. I think that's what the future games did lose a little bit, was just the eeriness and the feeling that you're constantly alone. FNaF 1 gets it so perfectly, because you're in a cramped office and you have so little power and so little time till you leave for the day. It's not like, oh, you have to go to the kitchen, you have to go to backstage, you have to go to this just to get these pages or these news articles saying, oh yeah, Freddy's closed down to faulty wiring or something. It's not like that. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's is told mainly by Easter eggs and newspaper clippings. We don't see anything of the story. We're told it through Phone Guy, but that's the only way we're told the story, is mainly just from newspaper clippings. Phone Guy gives us a little bit of insight, but he doesn't give us a whole lot. So FNaF 1 gets that formula so perfect. And that's why I still love FNaF 1. And I think that's why a lot of people love FNaF 1. The formula for FNaF started with FNaF 1. And it was done beautifully. It was done perfectly. And then, of course, the success of the first game, Scott made a second one, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which, to me, was probably my first Five Nights at Freddy's game I've ever played. So it holds a special place in my heart for that reason. But it was just like, it changed the formula of FNaF. It changed the camera system. It changed how the animatronics worked. It changed a lot of things. It changed how you defend yourself. It changed why you need to look at the cameras, which, might I add, I kind of don't like how the only reason you need to check the cameras of FNaF 2 was just for the puppet. I wish that, in a way, it was similar to FNaF 1, where there were like an animatronic or two you had to keep your eye on for that. It was just so... FNaF 2 was done great. The camera thing obviously could have been done better. And the ambience in FNaF 2 was something that you can't replicate. And I think Scott almost replicates it perfectly throughout his future games. But FNaF 2, if anything, is a good sequel. It's a great sequel. It's a sequel that builds upon it, but it also keeps it the same. It's still something familiar. FNaF 3 came out around 2015. It was only a couple months after the second game, and People were ready, and Scott was ready. He was ready to see on how well this game would do. FNaF 3 just ended up not doing so well, mainly because of the jump scare that Springtrap gave. It wasn't scary. It wasn't like, oh my god, what the hell was that? It was just a simple, he moves to you and just makes a sound. Which the other FNaF games, they didn't do. They had them actually jump or lean in or just anything at you. But FNaF 3 just didn't do that. But the one thing FNaF 3 got right, and I love this, and sure, the other FNaF games did this, but they did it not in the best way I think they could have. Multitasking. FNaF 3 has you juggling so many things, and it's just so perfect, especially in the later nights, because in the later nights, you're just like juggling with trying to survive from Springtrap, but also trying to survive from not passing out because of your ventilation going offline. It's just done beautifully. FNaF 3, in a way, just revolutionized the way of multitasking in FNaF. And obviously, Scott had to make another one. He made FNaF 4, which at the time was considered the last game. And I think a lot of people knew that. They thought that it was going to be the last game. They didn't think that they were going to keep going. And so Scott made FNaF 4. And FNaF 4 is just the scariest FNaF game, in my opinion, besides another one, and we'll cover that in a bit. FNaF 4, if I could give FNaF 4 one praise, would just be a huge understatement. FNaF 4 changes the formula, and it does it so well. I've seen so many games change formulas and just fail. I've seen games that kept the same formula. Either they've done really great or they just completely failed. Only few games change the formula, but also keeping things familiar. Like the Spider-Man games. It changed how you select your gadgets, but it also kept a lot of the combat the same. It changed, but it kept it the same. FNaF 4 changed it all, and it did it so beautifully. While in the other games, you were in an office, and you had doors that could close by the click of a button, or a flashlight you could hold down. FNaF 4 didn't do that. It made it so you felt vulnerable, which was the point. FNaF 4, you're supposed to be playing a scared kid. And you know that if you're a kid and you're in the dark and you're scared, then you know you're going to be vulnerable. And so what Scott does is so genius. He just makes it like, yeah, you can't hold down this door. Like, you can't just press a button and the door will stay closed. No. You have to run to that door and you have to keep it closed by holding down a space, I think. I haven't played FNaF 4 in a while. But I know the game. You have to hold down the door. You have to hold it closed. And you have to wait. You have to listen. You're not in a security office or a pizzeria that has you holding an iPad. It's just, you're a kid in your house and you're scared. And the way FNaF 4 handles everything is from sound. Sound plays a huge part in the game. Sound is how you know that the Frettles are behind you, or that if you need to close your door from the breathing, or that if you don't hear breathing, check to see flashlight. It's how you know where everyone is. Because like I said, you don't have cameras. You just have your ears and your eyes. You can't just, okay, I'm going to look. Okay, Bonnie's right there. Chica's right there. No, you can't do that anymore. FNaF 4 changed that. And so, FNaF 4 technically was the end of Five Nights at Freddy's. Or it would be for at least a year. Or, I'll say a year. I think FNaF World came out in 2016, I think. I could be wrong. But FNaF World came out, and it was not given the best reviews. People thought it was such a downgrade from what we know this franchise can be. FNaF 4 had set that bar so high. How are you supposed to match that? So FNaF World was set to be not a normal FNaF game. It's just meant to be an RPG. Me personally, I love FNaF World. I think it's so overhated for what it is. It's just a unique experience from normal FNaF. I I don't know how to describe FNaF World. All I can describe it was that if you just want to play a FNaF game, but you don't want to get scared, then FNaF World is just a good way. It's a nice break from the scares. It's just a way just to put your mind at ease, put your heart at ease, and just be like, okay, time to play an RPG. FNaF World, sure, it's overhated, and I can see why. People think, oh, you know, this was not what we expected, and it's not what we were promised, and wasn't big or anything. And Scott has said that. In the recent Scott Cawthon and Daco interview, he did say that he would like to go back, and he would like to fix FNaF World, and he would like to make it bigger. It's clear that Scott hasn't given up on FNaF World like he did say he did. He doesn't want to leave it in the dust. He wanted to go back, and he wanted to change things, but he obviously can't. But maybe one day, FNaF World will get its sequel, or maybe even a remake. Who knows? And so after FNaF World, it was obvious that we were getting a brand new FNaF game in similar style to how all the ones were in the past. Sister Location. Sister Location was a unique FNaF game, is the best way I can describe it. Well, the FNaF games before and ahead were point and click and survive. Sister Location was more story-driven than it was gameplay. If anything, Sister Location was like, gotta do this, gotta do that, you gotta go there and gotta do that. And I think that's what makes Sister Location so unique from the other FNaF games. And I've said this before, how the FNaF games are unique in their own way. I think Sister Location is unique just because it just says the story. Kinda. It kinda says the story. But it gives it out in a way that you don't have to, like, spend hours at your desk contemplating, like, what does Circus Baby mean by saying this, or what the hell is the scooping room, or what are these weird discs that are in Funtime Freddy. It's just kind of given to us, but it's not at the same time. It's how Scott tells his stories. And FNaF Sister Location was such a big change. Sure, FNaF World introduced voice acting, but it was so, like, oh, you know, this isn't the greatest. So people just immediately forgot about it. But Sister Location introduced voice acting into the mainline FNaF games, and it was done beautifully. I cannot remember all the voice actors and actresses off the top of my head, so I'm very sorry. But obviously the one I remember the most is Kellen Goth, just because he's just the main voice in these games now. He has been for a long time. He voiced the amazing Funtime Freddy, who, fun fact, people do not know, was supposed to be German originally. I don't know why, but yeah, Kellen, you did an amazing job. I know you're not watching this, but if some miracle you are, Kellen, did a great job, and you still are. So we all wish you best of luck for your upcoming games and your upcoming FNaF voice acting, because we know you will do great. And then Sister Location just decided to throw in so many new characters into the game, into this timeline as well. One thing Sister Location does is giving us the past, if that makes sense. The FNaF games, FNaF 1 through 4, they didn't really tell us a whole much of Freddy's past. All we knew at the time was that there was a missing children's incident, they were lured into the back room by a man in a mascot costume, there was a bite of 87, that there was another restaurant called Fredbear's Family Diner, and another Freddy Fazbear's that's not FNaF 1 or 2. We know that Springtrap was the purple guy, and so much stuff. FNaF 4 was the most confusing of them all, and it still is to this day. But just like, these stories aren't given to us directly, we have to work for them. And so Sister Location is kind of like that, but like I said, the story is just given to us. The way we learn more about the story is just by completing the Circus Baby minigame. We learned that William's daughter is Baby. We learned that she's inside Baby. And, we also learn that, like, we just learned that we are Michael. We were playing Michael in these games. And I think Sister Location is a great game. I know there are people who disagree with that, but I still think Sister Location was a great game. No, FNaF 6, in my opinion, obviously should have been where the story ended. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the FNaF games, and I love what Steel was doing with them. But FNaF 6, Pizzeria Simulator, ties it together so perfectly. Because you just have this amazing line delivery by Henry. Telling William that, you know what, I'm just gonna let the clip play.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. My dog.
It's just, FNaF 6 did so much well. And it introduced a new idea, which I would love to see expand upon, which is the tycoon part of FNaF 6. FNaF 6 introduced the tycoon sections, which were so good. I love the tycoon sections because you're just making your own Freddy Fazbears. You're adding what you want to add. You're making sure you don't get sued at the end of the day, which is so, I wouldn't say realistic, because this is FNaF we're talking about, but it's so kind of realistic because restaurant owners, especially people like at Chuck E. Cheese or, I forgot that one other one, but there was like a rival for Chuck E. Cheese for a while. I think it was back in the 80s or 90s, I don't remember. But is that you have to worry about lawsuits because things can go wrong, especially if there are animatronics in the building. And not to mention there's also kids running around and just being dumb. So FNaF 6 takes the realism and kind of cranks it up a little, but also keeps it into the same supernatural sci-fi thing we all know. So, and FNaF just kept going. We had Ultimate Custom Night, which was Afton's personal hell. And if I could say anything about the original 8 games, yes, including FNaF World, the original 8 games, they all had something that made them unique. But they were also all the same. And that's good. That's good about Five Nights at Freddy's. You don't want to keep changing the story as you go. Because if you do that, people are just going to get lost. And Scott knows this. That's why he stuck with one storyline. One storyline throughout his original 8 set of games. He didn't go to a different storyline. He stayed the same. He stuck with a man who was so distraught over the loss of his kid that he basically broke. He snapped. He created killing machines that ended up costing his daughter's life. William lost so much. And unlike a lot of villains in horror games, William's kind of easy to understand. He lost so much in his life. He lost the 2 kids that he loved so much to his own creations. He might blame Henry for that, but he knows deep down that those are also his ideas and his creations. Elizabeth died because of Circus Baby. The crying child died because of Fredbear. And it was just so much that William had lost, he just snapped. He killed Henry's daughter. He killed the 5 kids. He stuffed them in suits to get away with his murders. And it worked. He got away for so long until death came back and collected, and well, it was going to collect its due, but William just had an urge to just not die, to keep living. And once again, that's what I love about the original 8 games. Scott sticks with one story. But obviously, we got to move past those original Scott Cawthon era of games. We're going to move past those. We're going to what I like to call the Steel Wool era of games. That being Help Wanted, Help Wanted 2, Security Breach, and Ruin. And, which I'm really excited for, Secrets of the Mimic. It's one of the, I cannot remember the name, I'm sorry. But I want to talk about Help Wanted. You remember how I said that FNaF 1 captures that eeriness, the eerie feeling, like that feeling you're alone so well? Well, FNaF Help Wanted is also a way to capture that same feeling. But not in flat screen in VR, because when you're in VR, you're in a full 360 environment. No more just looking at a flat screen. You are in the world. You're in the pizzeria. You're going up against these animatronics that you have been scared of for years. And Help Wanted does it so perfectly, because not only does it keep the original 3 games plus a bit of FNaF 4, and plus a little bit of sister location, and its own custom game, such as parts and service, in the game. Instead, it also brings in an old face. Well, I guess a new face, a new name, but same old villain. William, or Glitch Trap, as people call him. Or, what did some people call him at the time? Malware or Malhair or something like that? Anyway, Glitch Trap, William's alive. Of course, he always comes back. He never dies. And so, I think what they do so well with that is that how a lot of villains, and especially this, a lot of villains in horror media come back and they just keep going. Think of Halloween, for example. Think of Halloween, where Michael Myers comes back constantly. He doesn't stay dead. He comes back constantly. But we don't get an explanation. Sure, it's said that, as he has supernatural powers, that makes him immortal. But it doesn't change anything. It's still kind of dumb the way he comes back. But the way William comes back is so unique, in a way. Starting off with, and I want to bring this up, William comes back at first, and we don't know exactly why. It could be the unwillingness to not die, or just the remnant infused in him. Or, better yet, the agony. He survived that fire because he just got lucky. He got lucky, he survived that. And so, it's a race simulator game, but that he didn't get so lucky because he was trapped, and he burned there. And so he's in hell now. He's just in hell. And he is suffering for all of his misdeeds. And for the first time, he is begging for death. And so, Glitch Trap is technically William. But it's also not. It is William's brain implanted onto a circuit board. William's back. And he's still in his yellow rabbit suit, still with the iconic purple. We all know William's color scheme. And we know what his plan is. Kinda. This time, instead of killing kids, his plan is for someone to keep carrying on that legacy with Vanessa. Which immediately leads us into Security Breach. Security Breach, in a way, was for surely kind of a rush game. Kind of. I say that because I think they just had to meet delivery deadlines. Because Security Breach in itself is a good game, but the story's a little out of whack. And Scott even said this. He said that he had a specific story in mind, but he didn't tell Steel Wool what it was, which you got to admit is kind of impressive that he stuck with the fact he wants to keep his story so secret. He just didn't tell Steel Wool. And obviously, Security Breach didn't do so well at launch. But I can see why. I still consider it one of my favorite FNaF games. Because it separates itself. Well, every FNaF game before Security Breach was just, it was just a normal FNaF game. Point and click. Normal survive till 6 a.m. Security Breach, however, changes that. And I like that. Now, see if you guys might notice, I did skip out on a game. That being AR. And the reason I skipped out on it was because it's not necessarily a FNaF game. The reason I say that was because what's FNaF about it? The only two FNaF things that are there, the flashlight and the animatronics. I mean, don't get me wrong. I found it pretty funny, and I found it cool that Markiplier is canon in the FNaF universe. But still, AR just was kind of like a cash grab, in a way. And I don't mean that harshly. That's just how I see it. Because there's so much microtransactions in the game. You want a cool skin for Freddy, you want Freddy Frostbear, you want Chocolate Bonnie, you gotta pay like 30,000 fast coins or something. You gotta pay $30 for that. So obviously FNaF AR wasn't my favorite, and I truly thought it was good when it first came out, but the more I played it, the more I'm like, okay, this is kind of dumb. But obviously, we have 3 more things to talk about before the end. Let's start off with Ruin. Security Breaches DLC that people waited almost 2 years for when it was announced. Well, it was announced in 2022, but people were waiting for Security Breach for FNAF to get that horror back. And Ruin does it so well. And I've said this so many times, I know. But Ruin finds the way to take the bright and colorful game that was Security Breach and make it dark. In a way, Ruin was FNAF's reawakening. It showed that, hey, FNAF is back. And it's even better than before. Sure, some people might say like, oh, you know, yeah, it's like, it's okay. But like, Ruin kind of takes away what a lot of what Security Breach did. Security Breach gave Gregory gave the player weapons. It gave them defenses, which, yeah, that's new for FNAF, but it's not new. It's not new. Don't get me wrong. It's not new for FNAF, but we never had a Phaser Blaster or a Phaz Cam. We've only had 2 metal doors or flashlight or our mask. That was it. We didn't have anything else. And Ruin does that so perfectly by just taking that away. The only thing we have is a flashlight. And the Vandy mask too, but still, that's mainly used for puzzles. The only way to escape something in this game is to be smart. You can't just like go full forward, whip out your Phaz camera, your Phaser Blaster, and just like start going to town, start going trigger happy. Because that's not what Ruin's about. Ruin was about tying up loose ends in Security Breach and making Security Breach the game that it could have been. So, before we move on to Help Wanted 2, there's one more thing before Help Wanted 2 I want to talk about. Everyone knows what it is. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which had been in development for so long. It had been in development hell for so long. But it finally came out in October of 2023. And it's so crazy to think about that this little indie game that was practically just a small game. No one knew it was going to grow into, like, I want to say at least 10 games, 10, 11 games long with multiple books into a movie. And if anyone's seen my FNAF review, you guys know my thoughts on the FNAF movie. I loved it so well. And it adapts the FNAF games and the books so good. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the FNAF movie. I'm just going to say this. The FNAF movie is just what FNAF always has been. Kids scared. Kids that are scared and they're trapped inside these suits and just want to be out. They want to be free. And they don't want to keep being in this prison. And so we are ending this one more game. The newest game. Help Wanted 2. Now, Help Wanted 2 was everything you could have won out of a sequel. Help Wanted 2 takes Help Wanted and it expands and improves upon it. Originally, Help Wanted was just, yeah, here are the first 3 games. Parts of 4, parts of Sister Location, and original minigames. Have fun. Help Wanted, the only thing Help Wanted takes is Sister Location. Everything else is a unique, custom game. A unique game that we have never seen in a FNAF game before. Sure, we've seen parts and service, but there's not really much of that. FNAF Help Wanted 2 focuses on mainly Security Breach, which I understand. That is like the newest FNAF game out there. You're not putting in FNAF 4 or you're not putting in FNAF 2 in there. No, you're just putting in the newer games. And so Steel Wool put in the games that they didn't really use originally. They didn't originally use Sister Location all that much. They never used Pizzeria Simulator. They didn't use Security Breach. Well, obviously they didn't use Security Breach because that was still being worked on when Help Wanted came out. So if I could say anything, Help Wanted 2 is a great expansion. If anything, it takes FNAF Help Wanted and it just makes it better. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, clocking in at almost 30 minutes long, that is it. FNAF. In just 30 minutes. The story of how one man changed FNAF forever. One man named Scott Cotham, who created the games, who changed the way it plays, and kept the same story. The story of one family, one man, William Afton. And we can't just say Scott did it all, because we know that that's not the case. You want to know how I discovered FNAF? I didn't discover it from, oh, I heard my friends talking about it, or I saw it online. No. I got it from a YouTube video. And what YouTuber did I get it from? Well, I think that one's just theory. But, yeah, I saw a MatPat video when I was probably in first grade, which is how I found out about FNaF. It was on FNaF 4. I remember it. I remember it so well. And it was just him saying that the entirety of FNaF was just a dream. And I don't think without that video, I would have been completely different. I don't think I would have loved all the games I love, and I would have stuck to the same 2 games I played, which was Angry Birds and Minecraft. I wouldn't have created this channel for you guys, and I wouldn't have kept it going for so long. After 7 long years, I'm still going. Sure, my content's a lot slower, but it's just, I'm still going. I'm still going strong. At least I'm trying to. So with that, I can say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Scott Coffin. Thank you for the memories, for the scares, for the laughs, for the story, for the times I wanted to bang my head on my wall trying to figure out this story. Thank you for the amazing experience that was the movie I could see with 2 great friends of mine. And just enjoy it. Enjoy what we've been waiting so long for. Just sit down, have a laugh, and just love every second of this franchise. And so, Steel Wool, thank you for carrying FNaF for so long, since 2019. And you're doing an amazing job. We have so much hope for you, and we believe in you. If I could summarize FNaF in one word, that would be legacy. FNaF is a legacy. It started off with Scott. It started off as one man who created this amazing franchise. But he took the legacy of those games and he passed the torch to Steel Wool. Sure, he's there and he's helping out Steel Wool with the story and whatnot. And Steel Wool one day is going to pass that torch on down to another developer. And one day that developer will pass it on to another developer, and so on and so forth. So yes, I think one word that describes FNaF is legacy. Because that's all it is. It's one big legacy to one man, Scott Coffin. So, once again, and I am saying this for the entire FNaF community, for every FNaF YouTuber out there, thank you, Scott Coffin, for everything.